This video then is going to be about repairing the windscreen of the camper van, and we can see that a previous repair has been attempted in the past. They have done so with individual bits of steel. They are flat and not curved to the shape we want, and they've done that probably because they haven't got the tools to form this sheet metal. I am going to be cutting this out, of course, and we're going to be shaping it so that we only need a very light skim of filler, perhaps 1 mil. I removed about 10 mil of filler out of this, which is 9 mil too much. There is part of the windscreen aperture that is still original and in place. There's another sheet that comes up to meet this, and most of that is okay, but some repair work will need to be done to the sheet that's underneath, and I'll need to shape this to suit the aperture to fit the windscreen. I've already done the other side. That one was a bit easier because there was a little bit less work to do, but I'm going to make the left side look like the right side in this video. Unfortunately, you cannot buy a section that just goes across the top. You have to buy the whole front panel. That's quite a lot of money to waste when you only need the top. So that is why I'm going to make and repair the top. The first thing I want to do is make some templates. Because we have this curve on this side which is still in good condition, we can make a template and then compare it to what this is. Also, we could make a template, I think, to go along this curved edge here, and then we'll be able to see where the curved edge here should be, because I don't think it's probably in the right place. It looks like it dips inwards to me, so make a template and we'll be able to see where this needs to go and be able to mark the line where it needs to fold. I've already taken some measurements, and these figures here relate to the distance between that edge and that edge there, and it changes as it goes across the aperture. I said I was going to make a template to check this, but actually this tool here will do a good enough job at telling me if the shape needs to be altered or it's correct. We can see from this angle that there is a bit of a gap. Now this little bit here, I believe, is original. It looks like it is to me. So it's worth making a template to replicate that curve while it's still there. That is the nice thing about having a guillotine. You very quickly have a nice straight piece of steel. If you haven't got a guillotine, then I made a video about this. This is just a straight edge with tungsten carbide glued to the edge so it doesn't wear down as you use it, and you can use your angle grinder and this guide to make very straight cuts. What I'm going to do then, I'm going to bend this using the shrinker stretcher around the aperture. At this point here, I decided I would just check the gap around the aperture with the windscreen in place. I've just got it chalked up just to make sure that the gap looks uniform throughout the aperture. You see, I didn't make a pattern for this side, and the reason I didn't do that was because the aperture was in a good enough condition to make this panel and lay it on top of what was there. So that is the way I did that side, but because this side is much more worse in terms of what's been done before, I decided to make a pattern on this side. With the windscreen in then, because I can now check the gap, I can check that the pattern I make for this side is going to work out okay. The next thing to do then, I've got my dimensions from the other side. The total length of the bit I want to put in is 48 millimeters. I just need to know the length. And what I'm going to do is put in one fold, and then I'm going to stretch this edge so that it curves. I'll have to shrink this edge so that it curves as well. And when I've got that shape in place, then I'll mark the position of this fold, and I'll roll that in with the bead roller. The plan is to fold this edge down to about 10 mil. This will get rid of some of the rustiness that's at the top, and you need to go down about 10 mil to get rid of that, I think. You might be wondering why I'm not doing this all in one piece, because I've got to replace this anyway. Why don't I make the whole section? And that really is down to my choice based on my ability and also the tools I've got. It would be possible to make this in one piece. You need to be able to stretch this length. So this is 26 mil that way, 12 mil that way. That's not too bad a problem. I can almost get away with it actually, but it would be quite difficult. And sometimes you can say to yourself, well, shall I make it, attempt to make it all in one piece, or shall I make it in a couple of pieces? I know I can make it in two pieces. I'm not going to have any problems. If I attempted to make it in one, maybe I could do it, maybe I'd struggle. So I'm going to stick with what I know I can do, and perhaps at some point I'll try and make one all in one piece, but today is not that day. What I'm going to do is start from this end, start stretching this here. Like I said, that will have to be shrunk as I go as well. And I've got a nice datum edge, so I come back to the same place each time. What's important is keeping this at the right angle. So if it was sort of tilting upwards slightly, that would change the amount of curve. Likewise, tilting down slightly. So I need to make sure that this is orientated in the place that I want it throughout this process. Otherwise I have to go back and have to start moving things. Having removed the outer, we can now see the condition of the inner, and it's not very good. And that's what I was on about, where we've lost this top edge, and that's why I wanted to make this pattern this side, because now that edge has been lost, there's no reference point to go by. So we're going to rely on the pattern to get it back in the right place. I've cut out this section here to gain access to the inside. I didn't want to at this point. I'd rather have left it for the time being, but I had no choice. I had to gain access. While I'm here, we can see some wiring. Look, nice block connectors, insulated crimp connectors, very nice. We can also see that this has been repaired. Nice chunky bit of filler in there. That does explain why there was no hole. This is a bolt-in dash section that's supposed to be bolted to there, but a repair has obviously been needed and put in without the holes to fasten it. Using the pattern, it's now easy to establish the height of the repair section that needs to go in. So if I cut a bit to 50 mil, I know that will be about right. And I can also use this for a scribed line to cut afterwards. I want to stop for a second just to talk about this screwdriver. Now you may think to yourself, what on earth is he going to say that's interesting about a screwdriver? Well, don't judge yet. This screwdriver I found in the boot of a Humber Imperial, and I was given this Humber Imperial by a family friend. And the reason I was given it is because I expressed an interest in it. I had an interest in it because my granddad had a Humber Imperial. Now the one my granddad had was particularly interesting. First of all, I never saw it move. It was always covered up. The engine was seized, and the whole time I was looking in the shed, it never moved. But I was sort of fascinated by it a little bit because it was a luxury type car, and I'd never seen it move. Now, my granddad was given this car by the Liberal Democrat leader, which called Jeremy Thorpe. Had the registration FAF 350D. And if you've ever seen the TV drama, A Very English Scandal, played by Hugh Grant, you know the story of what went on. And during that trial, Jeremy Thorpe owned this vehicle, and you can see pictures of it online. And the reason Jeremy Thorpe gave it to my granddad was because he used to drive Jeremy around to local villages where he would do his whatever politicians do. They campaign, don't they? So my granddad got that job through the North Devon Motor Club. Jeremy was looking for a driver to be able to know the local roads, to get between villages to do his campaigning. And after all that, when Jeremy he had to retire, he gave the car to my granddad, and my granddad kept it until my granddad died, and then the car went off to auction. And that was the very first time I'd seen the car out in the light after all that time, was when it was finally sold. So that is a little story about this screwdriver and how it reminds me of a Humber Imperial and Jeremy Thorpe and my granddad. I've repaired these sections now and used the template to cut this line. I've also placed the new strip against the windscreen to make sure it follows the profile. I've got the panel clamped in place now with the pattern in its right place. That line dictates where the pattern should be, and then I know where this panel should be. So next I need to mark a line where this fold needs to happen, and at that end is different to that end. There's a lot more overhang this end, and it tapers about here. It starts to get wider here, so I'll need to mark that line best I can. I've scribed a line there where the fold needs to be, and I've scribed a line there. I've also marked two lines where this stays straight up until that line, then it tapers out to that line, and then it stays straight from there on. But I need to transfer this line to the back side of the panel because I'll have to turn the panel over in order to fold it. So that will be the next step. Transfer the line to the back side is easy. Just set these calipers using the line I scribed. I haven't got that quite right, but you know what I mean. And then I can just scribe along there. That's the line transferred, and it tapers from one line to the other. And I've cut off some of the excess that wasn't needed. We're now ready to fold this. The folding is going to be done with this tool. I grooved this out in the lathe, so I had this type of tooling. Didn't come with the machine, but if you go gentle, it does a nice job. the edge is starting to fold down now, but as we get to the corner, it doesn't want to. And that is because we're trying to make it fold, and it doesn't want to because it's having to stretch. And it won't stretch, basically. It will just resist folding. So this edge needs to be stretched. And sometimes it can be difficult to know if an edge needs to be stretched or it needs to be shrunk. But if you imagine a circle going around here, and then you imagine another circle going around the outside here, it's easy to see that the second circle is much bigger than the first. And therefore the distance from a point on the circle is going to be further on the bigger circle, which means it needs to stretch. With that edge stretched, it's come down where we need it to. I'll scribe a line where it's touching, cut that out, and then I'll tack weld it in place, and then I'll get the windscreen and just test align it, make sure it's okay, and then I can fully weld it in. When I did the other side, I used these calipers to measure from the top folded edge down to the paint line, and that means I can use that to set the other side. This side, as we can see, needs to come down a little bit. I'll cut it first, and then I'll bring it down, probably mark it again, and then cut it again to bring it down to where it needs to go. I've marked the locations of where I want the holes for the plug welds, and I always, wherever I can, I use a hole punch to punch the holes for plug welding. Used to drill them, but it's so much faster using a hole punch. Well worth the money you invest in this machine. This is a Roper Whitney hole punch, and it punches a hole 7mm. Just, it's actually Imperial 7.14. Normally I use 8mm. 7mm is okay. 6mm is getting close to the limit. Below that, you're really risking not getting a good plug weld, and that is because when you start the plug weld in a smaller hole, if you catch the edge a little bit, there is a chance that it won't penetrate to the bottom. So that is the size I use, and I wouldn't go any smaller. But the hole punch is so much faster than any drilling. There's no deburring. Speed is the main benefit. I'm finally ready to weld this in. What I've done is check the measurements between top and bottom of the aperture, so I can put a few welds in the plug welds, and then I'll need to push this down and set it to the height I want with the calipers.
I would like to say thank you to my friend Adam for lending me his welder. I doubt he watches these videos, so won't hear this, but there's always a chance, right? After Christmas, my welder stopped working, and as my other friend John said, your business relies solely on a working welder. You need a spare. As much as I hate admitting John being right about something, he is. So this is my new welder, and I'll have the 01 fixed as a spare.
The welder is welded nicely, and I've put the glass in to check the fit. I'd say it comes away slightly further than I'd like in that corner. That probably happened when I clamped the two pieces together. There was a little bit of force to clamp them together, and that probably moved it a little bit. But it's not big enough to be of concern. I will put the windscreen in properly before any paint goes on, just to make sure there's nothing obvious. any plug welds where I haven't caught the entire hole needs to be rectified. A lot of people just leave them in there, but the trouble is when you get a bit of water against that, even though it's painted, it will start to rust from that point, so make sure you deal with those. The next thing to tackle is this, and it's a double curvature. Curves quite a lot in that direction and it curves quite a lot in that direction, which means it's going to need a lot of stretching in the middle and then shrinking around the outside. There is another curve which I forgot about, which is this curve, and that curve is going to be put into the material I cut. So I've just formed this strip to roughly the curve I want on the material. It doesn't have to be accurate at this point because it will all get cut off to the right width. The old section removed. We can see a bit of corrosion here. Now I'm a bit concerned that it goes all the way down the edge. I've seen it on this van already where filler's been used to conceal lots of holes. I'll put the Borescope down there so I can have a better idea if that's the case or not. My intention with the new panel is to fold the edge and wrap it around like it should be. It's going to be a little tricky to get this right, but it's worth a go. If it's not right, then I'll have to cut and weld it on the edge. Don't want to do that because it's not correct. It'd be much better to fold it around the edge, so we'll give it a go.
Using the Borescope, we can see it's certainly corroded, but no evidence of filler on the inside, which should mean rust holes have not been covered over. A repair at the bottom is evident, but apart from that, it's not as bad as it could be. I really like the Kaiweets Borescope I'm using, and if you want one, there's a link in the description for a 15% discount. I've done a video demonstrating its uses in the body restoration field.
I've tacked my panel in place, and I need to cut along the line that I cut underneath, but I can't get to the inside to scribe it from the other side. What I've done then is just marked 30mm positions up to the line and then transferred that line to this piece. I can't do that along the top for obvious reasons. So on the top I'm going to cut a little bit, cut this section out and see if I'm going along the line or if I'm deviating. I have to do that in little sections to make sure I don't go too far off. It's quite easy to go offline doing it that way. Big gaps can result, so I've got to be careful. I can't see of another way at the moment. With marking where the edge needs to fold, I've made this bit which follows the door. I'll just put that in place, scribe the line, and then I'll transfer that line to the back side and then fold it. nearly done now. All I've got to do is fix this little bit here. From the images on the Borescope, it doesn't look like fill has gone the other side of here, so hopefully it doesn't go too far and it won't take me too long to repair that. I can't really fold this edge back properly until I take the door off, so I'll do that when I have to take the door off. There we go. I hope you liked this video. Hope you find it of use. A bit of a different video than I normally do, sort of slower pace, quite a bit longer. I hope I've included more detail this way, but let me know if you like this type of video rather than the sort of quick fire videos that I've done previously. Okay, see you next time.